Hi, I'm Larry Micarenda, and welcome to this edition of Money Watch with Suffolk County Comptroller Joe Sawicki. Joe, since last time we've been on, numbers flying, things coming in, but something kind of to celebrate, Joe. 10 years. 10 years of being the controller, 10 years of audits and other things. What do you have to say about that to the public?
Well, it's certainly a historical achievement in my career. One that as of December 31st, I hit 10 years as the county controller, as Suffolk County's taxpayers' fiscal watchdog, if you will, of their tax dollars and how it's being spent in the county level. We were looking at over some audit reports and some compilations of our achievements in office over the last 10 years, and in looking at some totals, they're pretty remarkable, and it points to great staff we have. I mean, a great, very professional staff, certified public accountants, have a great accounting unit, great auditing unit, and as a total over 10 years, we've conducted 316 audits in 10 years, which resulted in $20.2 million in audit findings. Audit findings is how money has been misspent, how we've identified how you could correct your agency or department going forward. But even more so, out of the 316 audits, we actually got back from the county, for the county, $9.95 million. And that's recouped money from agencies out there that misspent money, from all kinds of, whether it's Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield or Express Scripts, the county's drug plan, or from Verizon on the phone audit we did years ago. These are all real money that we bring back to the taxpayers and to the county treasury. So that's a good thing. The audit division is a major function as our office, as you know, and it's one of the most unit that gains the most publicity because everybody's always interested in how their money's being spent and what we find in audits. Some of the more other serious, just as serious areas, but not as public, is the borrowing function. As the chief financial officer of the county, I'm always charged by the county executive and the legislature when they pass resolutions on what to borrow and how to borrow. And as we've talked about in some shows, we borrow twice a year for long-term, meaning for capital bonds, for roads and bridges and repair, capital buildings, the new jail, for instance, and in short-term for cash flow purposes. And some of the totals were enormous also. We borrowed $1.9 billion with a B dollars in 10 years, and interest rates anywhere between 1% to 5% when the economy was tilted in the other direction. And in terms of short-term notes, we've borrowed $4.3 billion. At interest rates anywhere between 0.34% to 3%. And so it's like pretty staggering numbers when you look at billions of dollars. And most importantly, when I point out how much we've borrowed, more importantly is that we've been able to pay back every single note and every single bond on time, and in a very conservative way. And by conservative way, I mean long-term bonds. We pay off, within 10 years, we pay off 64% of our long-term debt in 10 years. And that's always our goal in the controller's office, and one of my policies that I like to share with the legislature and the county executive, that this is something I believe in. Let's get out of debt as quick as we can, and let's also do nothing but fixed rate debt, almost having a fixed rate mortgage in your home. And none of this variable rate debt. Some other counties, some other municipalities in our region got in trouble years ago because they were investing in variable rate debt. And all of a sudden, when interest rates start going up, guess what? Your interest costs go up, and that means higher taxes for the taxpayers. So our fixed rates
your bond
have done
rating
us
goes
well.
down
And
also?
the bond rating goes down as well, exactly. So, so that's been kind of like a recap of 10 years. Our payroll hit $1 billion annually in the county for 11,000 employees a couple of years ago. Now it's down to about $960 million a year for payroll, 10,600 employees. So the county's big business, and being its CFO is a job that I take very seriously. Some interesting numbers and some a lot of achievements, a lot of hard work. But again, it's a great staff around me that that we've been able to be as successful as we have been.
And what about some cooperation, Joe? You received a lot of help, right, from the Suffolk County DA and from the Suffolk County presiding officer, Bill Lindsay, who was on this program once with us.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's what it is. All working hand in hand with other officials. Tom Spoder and I, we We work a lot together in terms of referring cases to him for criminal if we find white-collar crime. He does the prosecution and follows up with our findings, so that that's working for the taxpayers together. And we couldn't find a better partner than a Bill Lindsay as presiding officer of the legislature in terms of helping us shepherd some of our initiatives through the legislature. When we have to borrow money, we need their approval. It's a good checks and balances in the county because I just can't go out and borrow at a whim, or because I feel like borrowing the money. I need legislative approval in the form of a resolution with the county executive to borrow, whether it's notes or bonds. County Executive Steve Ballone, he's been terrific to work with. I mean, it's nice to now have a county executive who is hands-on in our bond rating meetings and phone calls and conference calls. Steve and I work side by side in trying to convince the bond rating agencies on Wall Street of Suffolk's financial picture and our financial health. Even through tough times that we've had, tough financial times over the last 3 years, we've been able to work through it. Our bond ratings by Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's was still in the A category. And even though our financial picture has been hurting in the last 3 years, every municipality across the country, just about every municipality across the country has been hurting. But, Steve Ballone and I, we kind of sit down, we go through the rating agencies and any banks before they lend us money if they have questions about our financial picture. And, it's working together with the county executive that helps the taxpayer, working with the legislature, Bill Lindsay and the entire legislature. We work together. And the reason why we still have bond ratings and long-term ratings in the A category is because the legislature and the county exec take the financial issues, financial problems, and the challenges, meet them head on. Instead of waiting for them to really have a detrimental effect on the county, they're proactive and go out front to resolve it. I mean, Steve Ballone inherited an absolute mess when he took office in January 1st, 2012. He absolutely, $500 million deficit was left to him by the prior county executive because of one-shot revenues to solve the county's budget over the years. There was a structural imbalance. Our revenues, our normal revenues and normal expenses weren't matching. The expenses were far outweighing the normal revenues. So the prior county executive kept throwing one-shots out there, which one-shot means it's a revenue that's only going to be there for 1 year, only lasts for 1 year, and that's it. The following year, you better have another revenue source to balance your budget the next year. Well, when Steve Ballone came in office, it was like a $500 million shortfall over 3 years through the end of December of 2013. So he's made a lot of headway. The legislature's made a lot of headway. And again, it's working together for the benefit of the taxpayers. And you put the politics aside, and and our job as the controller, we deal with the county finances for the taxpayers. Politics means nothing to me. It's doing the work with who's ever in office, and because we all have a common boss, and that is the Suffolk County taxpayer.
And Joe, what do you see the office? I mean, we just discussed the past 10 years. What do you see like the next couple of years going with the controller's office? Doing the same thing, more audits, more things. I know there's going to be a DSS initiative that's coming up.
Absolutely. We've been as part of 2013. And as we were charting our course where we want to undertake our audit efforts. And just like every other office in the county, we've suffered cutbacks in staff because of the county budget and the financial dilemma and problems we've had. And I respect that. I respect the county executive and the legislature for having to do what they got to do. So we have to make the most we can with the limited resources we have. And so therefore, we meet continually with our chief audit staff. And it was just this week, we are deciding, and I met with Steve Ballone actually today, we are going to undertake a joint initiative, the county executive and I, to go in and look at Medicaid fraud and where it is in Suffolk County. The amount of Medicaid money, and actually not only Medicaid, but all entitlements, through the Department of Social Services. I mean, the Department of Social Services, they've been hit hard too with staff cutbacks over the years. And there's a ton of money going through the Department of Social Services toward entitlement programs and especially Medicaid. If you figure, Larry, that out of the county's $2.7 billion budget, just in Medicaid expense alone, the net cost of Suffolk County is like $230 million a year in Medicaid. And that's Suffolk County's net cost. That's a lot of money. And my fear is that social services, they're supposed to have a special investigative unit. They're shortchanged too. And I don't know what in terms of what their auditing capability is over there, but we want to go in and we want to really look inside of how Medicaid's being spent, how all the entitlement programs are being spent, whether it be food stamps and child care. We want to make sure that it's being spent and utilized in not only a prudent way, but in an honest way, and that there's no rip-offs out there. Because we all, as public officials, as elected officials, we hear a lot of comments from people like, there's rip-offs going on here. People aren't spending their money here. Or people are using their Medicaid money or they're not Medicaid money, but their food stamp money to buy beer and such allegations like that. I want to go in and see if that's true.
Right.
And talking with Steve Ballone today, totally on board. And we're going to need the resources of social services. We're going to need his resources, but most of all, we're going to need, my auditors as well. And we're going to go in and we want to take a good hard look at how social services and how the entitlement programs are being spent. If you combine, as I mentioned, Medicaid is $225 to $230 million a year across the county. If you throw in the others, family assistance, child care, and the like, it comes to almost $500 million a year out of the county's budget. That's $500 million county taxpayers have to pay for these entitlement programs. I want to see how they're being spent. And again, that's going to be a major initiative.
And again, Joe, federally mandated programs, as we have those beautiful state mandated programs for the county that the state loves to throw at us.
New York State is the most liberal of Medicaid spending states in the nation. That came out in a congressional report that we were reading also this afternoon, that New York State's Medicaid dollars are the most liberal and are the highest giveaway of any state in the country. And that bothers me because that has a direct impact on our Suffolk County taxpayers. And if we can accomplish anything this year, I want to delve into that Medicaid spending and social services spending and see where it's going and make sure it's spent right.
And Joe, as the public has to know from watching these programs, that you don't single out one department. You do audits you've done an audit from the Suffolk County Police Department. That was just recently. You've done audits with the telephones and any service that's basically dealing with the county, that the county is laying out money for each and every single month. You're there to audit and check the check and balances. Somebody's got to watch the watchers, right?
Exactly. That's our role as the controller.
And, with this new thing with the DSS, if you can discover more money or ways to cut some of the theft that's going on, that's going to be more money that the county will have, that it doesn't have to lay out.
Exactly. I know that, there's a lot of work that should be done into this area, and we're going to do it. We just want to win. It's a big area. It's a huge area to go into when you're looking at it, just one facet of Medicaid, for instance, $230 million. That's a lot of money. And again, we want to get into that and roll up our shirt sleeves and see how that's being spent, make sure it's being spent properly. So I expect to be having more to share with you and our viewers down the road as this audit progresses.
And plus, we have in our next show, we'll be talking about the sales tax numbers and everything else. We'll probably have all that information for the next show. Probably.
Yeah, we'll have our financial statements will be ready for the year ending 2012. We're in a process of finalizing our numbers now as we tape this show, so it'll take another good month yet.
Now, Joe, another subject that we've talked about in the past, and I just want to explain to the public one more time. The tax allocation notes, what they really are, is that the county borrows money in lieu of the taxes it's going to receive from the towns. Is that how these things work?
Well, no. The tax anticipation notes that we borrow, like for instance, we just borrowed in mid-December $410 million. That's an annual borrowing. Right. Every mid-December we borrow that. That's to supplant the county's cash flow between January 1st and midsummer, when the towns turn over the property taxes that they collect.
Right.
They collect it, as everyone knows. They pay their property taxes in May, and then in January and then May of each year. The town tax receivers and the towns keep that money until June or July, when they have to turn it over by law. After they pay the fire districts and the library and the school districts, they turn over the remainder to the county. We need cash to operate and to function and to pay the county's bills. So we borrow tax anticipation notes in the meantime. So yes, you're right in terms of how they have to pay us back, but. An interesting note is you talk about our bond rating and note rating. The $410 million that we just borrowed in December, we borrowed that at 0.67% of an interest rate. So it's like It's low. It points to the fact that the financial community, the banking institutions across America, the huge conglomerates, when they lend us this money, they, number one, they know they're going to be paid back on time. They know that Suffolk County is financially solvent. They know that they got a team to look at terms of the legislature and the county exec to really depend on to that we will repay the money, and so therefore that results in low interest rates like that.
And also the great bond rating. That's going to help too.
Exactly.
Right? And like you were saying
All
before.
translates. Yeah.
So basically, the anticipation notes is waiting for the money, anticipating the money to come from the
Exactly.
towns, and then the county, whatever is allocated to the county, that uses it for the budget. And
Correct.
Stuff like that.
Correct.
Just so we had a question from a viewer about that. I just wanted to straighten that out.
Yes.
So now we're going to have the new tax anticipation notes. We're getting a good rate on that. Or we just did, right? 'Cause
We
it's
just
December.
did, right? 0.67%. Yes.
That'll carry us into June.
That'll carry us
right?
into June. The towns turn over the money, and then we'll probably do another short-term borrowing in the fall. But it's an annual borrowing. It's much less of the money.
And then December, it's like lather, rinse,
It's
repeat. It
same thing
happens
over
every.
again. Yeah. Exactly.
Now, some of the other things that you've been working on in the department is you've been working on looking for more theft from anything from employees to anybody else who may misappropriate funds from the county.
Well, one of the areas that is kind of a pretty big area, and we've been involved in auditing this for about a year, and that's the county's military reserve program. And I'd like to share with our viewers, they've probably seen a few articles on that in the media over the last couple of months.
Right.
And the county, we've been auditing the military reserve program, the county, and if we're owed any money from military reservists. And let me start off by saying that no one is more proud of our military people and fighting overseas and risking their lives than you or I and most elected officials that I know in Suffolk County. However, in acknowledging such, back in the early 1990s, with the first Persian Gulf War and the Desert Storm, and then again in 2001, 2002, when we were involved in the second war, the county legislature recognized the valiant efforts of our men and women who are military reservists and get called to duty and are sent overseas to fight for us. And these dedicated men and women were made whole by the county legislature by passing two resolutions, one in the 90s, one again in early 2000, which said that if you make less money in the military when you go, active military duty, the county will make up the difference and guarantee you and your family that you will receive the higher of the two. So if your military pay is less and your county pay is more, they will continue to pay your county salary throughout your term in service. What we found is that there was a program in the county which basically wasn't working. And that program was you had some county departments that had very little records on military reservists that were out of county work. And you're talking about employees that are out of county work. Some of them went overseas to fight. Some of them just went in other parts of the country. Some of them just went in West Hampton.
Right.
But they were on military active duty. And they never maintained a follow-up to how much they were getting paid and if they repaid it upon return.
Right.
You're not supposed to keep two paychecks. I mean, New York State, the state of New York has the same agreement with military reservists who work for the state. Nassau County has the same exact agreement. And the bottom line is that while you're allowed to keep the higher of the two salaries as a military reservist, everyone signed an agreement. Now, this is again pursuant to county law, to sign an agreement that when they returned, they would pay the lesser of the two salaries back. The only problem is nobody kept track of it.
Right.
A few people paid back when they came back from service, but the large majority paid nothing. As we started our audit about a year ago, we found that the county had no program. And this transcends several county executives.
Right.
And it was an issue which I immediately went out and met with, because a lot of the payback had to directly involve the unions. and some of
Right.
the union negotiations and some memorandum of agreements between the union presidents and their members.
Right.
And I know that in dealing with the union presidents, Noel DiGirolamo from the Suffolk County PBA, Anthony Prudenti from the Suffolk County Deputy Sheriffs, Vito Dagnello from the correction offices, they all had a lot of people who worked in the military as a military reservist.
Right.
They did a great job as PBA, as presidents of their union, in helping us get their members to come forward and to sign a new agreement saying that yes, they'll repay. Because what
Right.
we basically had to do was we have to go back and just completely revamp a county policy that was broken, that nobody enforced.
And implement a new system, because there was really no system there in the first place.
Exactly. Now you're talking. We're still in the process of finalizing the audit now as we're going through this, and it's not a fun one for me because I don't like, I don't like talking, going after veterans, so to
Right.
speak. But at the same time, when you're a veteran, not a veteran, but when you're a military reservist and you sign a paper with the county saying you promise to pay back, and the county law says you have to pay it back. It's my role as the controller to make sure this is paid back, because
Right.
this is money that belongs to all county taxpayers,
Right.
especially if you're not overseas.
Right.
So we basically came to a compromise in going after these. And we say, okay, while the state of New York and Nassau County make these military reservists pay back everything, their basic military pay, their food allowance, their housing allowance, and other combat pay type of allowances, we kind of reach the middle ground and say, wait, you know what? If you went into the military and if you served our country and protected our nation and its freedoms, we don't want all you. We don't want your housing money. We don't want your
Right.
food allowance. We don't want your
Right.
combat pay. We don't think that's right.
Trying to be
so we
fair.
worked out with the union presidents, who were great in working with us. They said, just give us the basic military payback, because that will satisfy the law that's on the books. So this all is ending up is ending up fine. The results are fine. We're going to get back well over $3 million back for the county taxpayers with this. In a way, you could say, the reservists that paid up front, they volunteered when they came back from active duty. It's fair to them that the people who didn't pay up front, but then again, the people who didn't pay up front when they came back, nobody was going after them to ask them to pay back either.
Because there was no policy.
There was no policy,
So,
and it was a very flawed policy.
Exactly.
And what the little policy that was involved changed from department to department, and sometimes in one department it changed several times over.
Right.
So again, this is something which we're getting, over $3 million back to Suffolk County taxpayers. So
Right.
we'll be talking about this more, but it's an audit which is very in
And
depth.
the county
audit.
needs the money. Your
The
job
county
is to
needs the
find the money.
and nobody is entitled to 2 paychecks. So. Most people understand, even though it's not easy getting back money that was spent by someone before, the bottom line is they signed before they went away on military.
Right.
They got their full county salary.
Right.
The county had a very generous policy, and we're upholding that. But at the same time, we're saying, hey, you got to pay back the lesser of the two, because that's the law.
And talking about doing the job, Joe, right? Certificate of Excellence over to the New York, Suffolk County Controller's Office?
Yeah, this is
Now,
something.
did that come from the state of New York, or was it from the Fed?
That was it was an award we received from the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada, of North America.
Wow.
For the 29th consecutive year, they awarded us, in our financial statements and our financial reporting, what we call a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. It's a national award, well, almost international if you include Canada.
Right.
And this is a very non-political body. It's made up of finance officials from across the country, like 16,000 of them. And this is really, and I have no one to thank but my staff. I have, as I was alluding to earlier in the program, they have staff made up of, CPAs, professionals, dedicated people. And it's good to know that in government, because government employees get knocked a lot, whether it's a federal government, a state government, local governments, and it's good for our taxpayers to know that we have some really dedicated, hardworking people that really care about their jobs. And when they care about their jobs, they make a guy like me look good, who oversees the whole department. And so to receive this award for the 29th consecutive year, this means a lot, because this award, we really talk, a lot about this award when we promote this award, when we go to borrow money. It's part of our financials. When big banks that want to lend us money see that we received this certificate, that our financial statements are accurate, that they're very easy to read, that they've received this award, they say, "Hey, Suffolk County's got its stuff together."
As well as the bond rating people, because they're going to be reading that report.
Exactly.
So now, in your tenure, Joe, which is 10 years, so this is basically what, your 10th award now?
Yeah, correct. 10th, 29. My predecessor, Joe Caputo, was a controller for 24 years, and it started under his watch, and it's something we've continued, and it's something I'm very proud of. I'm proud of my staff for helping to achieve this.
And weren't you the deputy under him?
Yeah, a long time ago. Back in the 70s and early 80s, before I was elected to the State Assembly.
Yeah, a couple of moons, but you carried that with you, right? The awards.
Yes. Yeah.
The awards came back.
Yeah.
But like you said, we're going to have those other numbers. We're getting ready to wrap up here. But the sales tax numbers and all the other numbers that we're going to need, and this ongoing thing that's going to happen with DSS, which is obviously going to be big news if something,
if there's
comes
something,
of
we
it.
find something in it. Exactly.
And, this is the one thing that viewers have mentioned, Joe, is that usually when you go looking, you guys usually do find something.
We do our best.
It may be small, it may be big,
Right.
but usually
it's good people know we're looking. I mean, that's the key. There's been a lot of Medicaid fraud talked about in other areas of the state, in other areas of the country, and if New York State spends the most Medicaid dollars, it's our job to find out that that's being spent properly.
And not just that, how angry the public would get if they felt that somebody was ripping off county money, their taxpayer money.
And we do that all the time.
They're
This
not
is
going
what
to
we
be
uncover
happy.
in audits, I know.
Right. They're not going to be happy, but knowing that there's somebody out there, the fiscal watchdog, as you are, and trying to bring in the money, and 10 years of service with the county, it's all worked out.
Yeah.
But we're out of time, Joe, so we're going to save all those other subjects for the next show.
Good.
And invite you to tune in and watch Suffolk County Money Watch right here with Joe Sawicki and myself, Larry Mike Arenda. You can also go on to the Suffolk County website and go to Suffolk County Controller, and you'll be given a link to the show if you missed it. So until next time, we'll catch you right here.
This is Joe Sawicki. I'm your Suffolk County Controller. If you ever need to reach me, please feel free to do so by dialing 631 in Hopog, 853-5040, or by shooting me an email at the address as you can see.